Hello there, welcome once again to Meaningful Life. My name is Queen Esther. Uh, we are right here on this channel where we just go through the scriptures and we do a Bible study, or basically a scripture study. So we're just going to read, I'm going to read for you from the book of Exodus today, and I'll read from chapter 2 and chapter 3. If you remember from the last episode that we did, we were giving like an introduction to the nation of Israel, how it began, how it was born, up until the children of Israel were all in Egypt and they were being misused by the Egyptians as slaves because the Pharaoh that was there at the time did not know Joseph, who had brought the Israelites into Egypt. So he wasn't fond of the Israelites. He was actually afraid of them. So he ended up mistreating them. So we're not just going to go through the chapters as we will get into the birth of Moses and how he lived his life in the land of Egypt. So I'm going to read from chapter 2 of the book of Exodus, and it goes, and the men of the house of Levi went and took as wife a daughter of Levi. So this is the tribe of Levi in the tribe of Israel, the whole land of Israel, or should I say the children of Israel, were divided into tribes according to the children of Jacob. So Levi was one of those children, if you remember from what we read in chapter 1. So here we're seeing a man of this tribe marrying another one who is a daughter of the Levites as well. On verse 3 it says, so the woman conceived and bore a son, and when she saw that he was a beautiful child, she hid him 3 months. So you remember from what we spoke the last time, the Pharaoh was killing the children, the male children of the Israelites. So as long as a child was born male, he was supposed to be killed right away, thrown into the river. But we see here this woman doesn't want to do away with her baby, so she decides to hide the baby for 3 months. So this is now after 3 months on verse 3. But when she could no longer hide him, she took an ark of bulrushes for him, daubed it with asphalt and pitch, put the child in it, and laid it in the reeds by the river bank. And his sister stood afar off to know what would be done to him. Then the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river, and her maidens walked along the riverside. And when she saw the ark among the reeds, she sent a maid to get it. And when she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby wept. So she had compassion on him and said, this is one of the Hebrews' children. Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and call a nurse for you from the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for you? So we see Moses' sister um, going to call her mother to nurse the baby for Pharaoh's daughter. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, go. So the maiden went and called the child's mother. Then Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages. So the woman took the child and nursed him, and the child grew, and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. So she called his name Moses, which means drawn out, saying, because I drew him out of the water. So this is the birth of Moses, okay? Verse 11, now it came to pass in those days when Moses was grown that he went out to his brethren and looked at their burdens. And he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his brethren. So he looked this way and that way, and when he saw no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. And when he went out the second day, behold, 2 Hebrew men were fighting. And he said to the one who did the wrong, why are you striking your companion? Then he said, who made you a prince and a judge over us? Do you intend to kill me as you killed the Egyptian? So Moses feared and said, surely this thing is known. When Pharaoh heard of this matter, he sought to kill Moses, but Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water, and they filled the trough to water their father's flock. Then the shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and helped them and watered their flock. When they came to roll the father, he said, how is it that you have come so soon today? And they said, an Egyptian delivered us from the hand of the shepherds, and he also drew enough water for us and watered the flock. So he said to his daughters, and where is he? Why is it that you have left the man? Call him that he may eat bread. Then Moses was content to live with the man, and he gave Zipporah to his daughter to Moses, and she bore him a son. He called his name Gershom, which means stranger there, for he said, I have been a stranger in a foreign land. Now it happened in the process of time that the king of Egypt died. Then the children of Israel groaned because of the bondage, and they cried out, and their cry came up to God because of the bondage. So God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. And God looked upon the children of Israel, and God acknowledged them. So here we're seeing in this scripture, in this chapter, that Moses was Hebrew. He had been born by the Hebrew woman, but she could not keep him because of the law that the Pharaoh had placed in Egypt, that every male child of the Hebrew tribe should be killed. So she didn't want to kill the baby. So she made an ark for the child and placed the child in that ark. So she placed that ark by the riverbed. And when the Pharaoh's daughter saw this baby crying, she had compassion and took Moses and uh, took care of him as her own child. At the time when she found the baby, his sister, who was quite wise, thought of an idea and said to Pharaoh's daughter, let me tell a Hebrew woman to assist you to raise the baby until the baby is well off. And the Pharaoh's daughter agreed to that until the time when Moses' mother had to now take him back to the Pharaoh's daughter because she could not keep him. So Moses grew up in the king's house as son to the king's daughter. So he grew up as an Egyptian. So that is why when we see him after he had killed that Egyptian, because he had compassion on his on the family, on the Israelites, right? So he didn't like the fact that they were being ill-treated by Egyptians. So he ended up killing the guy who was beating up the Hebrews. So after this process, he had to run away because Pharaoh was going to kill him. Then he met the children of the priest in Midian. That is where he ended up staying, living with this priest, where he was then given one of the daughters, Zipporah, to be his wife. So you see now the girls, when they met him, they thought he was an Egyptian because they didn't know about his history. They saw the way he dressed and the way he carried himself as a man who had grown up in the house of the Pharaoh. So they just thought that he was an Egyptian. So now we see him married to Zipporah, and he has a son called Gershom. But God then heard the cry of the Israelites later on because the Pharaoh died, but the Israelites were crying because of the pain and the slavery that they were going through. And God remembered them because of the covenant that He made with Abraham. So now, in chapter 3, we see now Moses. I won't read all of it, but I'll just narrate it. We see now Moses tending the flock of his father in law Jethro. He's in the desert, and then He's up the mountain called Mount Horeb, which is also called the mountain of God. I guess that's where they would go and worship. So whilst he's there, he sees fire on a bush, but the bush is not burning. This is where he then hears the voice of God, and God sends him to be the deliverer of the Israelites. I would really advise you to go through this scripture and just read that chapter, and then you'll see when this miracle happened and Moses was witness to it, and God spoke to him through this bush. And then he then realized that he was actually called to save the children of the Israelites from the Egyptians. So now they would no longer be slaves because God was going to be taking them out of the land of Egypt back to the promised land where he initially made a promise to Abraham that your children will inherit this land. So I'm just going to end here for today, and then we'll go through the scriptures bit by bit and see the journey of the Israelites as they move out of the land of Egypt right to Israel. But do take time to read the scripture, Exodus chapter 3, and just see the conversation that God had with Moses and how he ended up going to the Pharaoh to speak to him concerning the children of Israel. Take care.